In the very beginning of 1 Peter, he uses this precious little term, the diaspora. And the church to whom Peter was writing was a church that had began to suffer for its faith a little bit, maybe in great ways. And you have to read 1 Peter in light of Peter. In fact, if I were going to give you a platform from which to read it, it would be that moment that Peter preserved his life by abandoning Christ and denying his association with Christ. So take, for instance, the first chapter of Peter, where Peter says, essentially, Christ is worth it. There is reserved for you this treasure, this jewel, which is imperishable and it will not fade away. And he appeals to his audience that Christ is worth every ounce of pain that you can imagine, and goes on to articulate the benefits of Christ and the gospel in living for him. And when he gets to 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13, and essentially says, gird your minds. Reserve this central reality in your mind of Christ and what he's done. Essentially saying, there was a time where I suffered the same type of heat that you suffered, and I abandoned Christ. But I've seen him. And so there's this precious little moment in the first chapter of Peter where he says something to the effect of, although you don't see him, you love him. And although you don't know him now, you desire to be with him. I mean, that is clearly spoken from the heart of a humbled man who had once abandoned the reality of Christ for self-preservation. So he's arguing back into 1 Peter and to the recipients, Christ is sufficient, Christ is worth it.